Our next panel is entitled The Power of Women in Construction, an Industry Opportunity. And it's moderated by Ann Martinelli, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for Aristeo Construction. She's going to lead a discussion of how the numerous career paths, advancement opportunities, et cetera, for women are going to address the current workforce shortage. And the panelists joining her, and I'll ask you folks to come ahead as I'm reading the names: Stephanie Hajducek, founder of This One's for the Gals; Tina Montone, industry liaison for Conspectus, Inc.; Karen Hager is president-elect for NAWIC; and Taylor Boileau, project engineer with Ryan Companies. And so as they come to the stage, we're going to turn this over to Ann for an interesting panel discussion on the power of women in this industry and how you can latch on to that. Thank you, ladies, so much. Let's welcome them to the stage.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Ann Aristeo-Martinelli from Aristeo, and I want to thank you for listening to what we think will be the next solution to solving our workforce crunch in construction. You've heard the panelists, and we're going to introduce them momentarily, but first, we all decided it would be best to lay the fact base for what's going on in the industry today and what we think some of the major opportunities can be. So what you're looking at is where the female labor force in the United States looked from 2015 to 2020. We approached a high water mark of 74.1 million women in the workforce in 2019. And the line chart you're seeing that is on the right axis shows the unemployment rate at the time was about 3.8%. In March 2020, when this data was taken again, just shortly after the first round of pandemic layoffs, we lost 5 million women from the labor force. Unemployment of women in the United States was 8.3%. We'll get the next round of data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2021's numbers very shortly next month, so there is a lag. But with 5 million women leaving the labor force, this is our opportunity, this is our time. We have a challenge now about how we're going to create more talent in our industry, and we have an opportunity to draw women from other sectors, retrain and upskill, or perhaps borrow women who have been historically in other industries and put them in functional roles within our sector. So here's some construction hiring scenarios, and I know we've talked about this at length. Right now, there are 388,000 open jobs as of the November 2022 final numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There are also 642,000 workers in our industry that are over 65, represents our retiring base. Without even thinking through the Infrastructure Act and the growth of jobs that will happen due to some of our national investments, we have a base of at least 1 million workers to roll up on. So here's the current share scenario. Right now, for every 100 women in the workforce, 1.7 of them are in our industry. If 2 million women return to the workforce as we kind of finalize the pandemic, and 1.7 of them return, that's your 34,000. It's not enough. The fair share scenario of GDP, which in the US for construction is 4% of our nation's economy, only gets us to 80,000 in that scenario. So what we'd like to do today is talk through with you a number of solutions and what these fantastically talented women are doing in their own respects. And they represent a wide variety of cross-functional roles across our built space. So as I was going through the data with the team, here was the most interesting thing we found. What industry sector, and I can't believe I'm talking about this in 2023, has the highest pay parity of women to men? Any guesses? Well, it's mining, but construction is second. So if you look at the median salaries of men and women, half above, half below, currently our nation sits at a woman is paid 82% of the male median salary. When you chunk that out by industry, you've got your mining, oil, and gas sector, and then construction as an industry is second. The line chart you're looking at, intermixed through the bars, is the percentage of women in those industries. So here's the dirty secret. Where the women are, the pay is not. Take a look at the specific roles here in the orange. You have civil engineering nearly at parity, which is a part of the A&E sector, which is at 85%. And you have construction managers, just one example role, at 86%. Now, I'm not advocating we say, hey, if you want to get paid what you're worth, why don't you come to construction? I don't think that's our marketing opportunity as an industry. But I think it's nice to lay out what you're seeing in other sectors where women tend to be in a stronghold: financial services and banking, education, health services, wholesale, retail. We have an opportunity that when women do re-enter, and they are going to, that we have this chance to attract them to our sector across a number of functional roles. And with that, I'd like to have, I'm going to start with Stephanie. And I'd like to have Stephanie start by introducing herself and each person. So why and how did you first join the industry? And what roles have you held throughout your career that got you into construction?
Hello, my name is Stephanie Hajducek. I am a project engineer and design lead for the Chemours Company at their Corpus Christi plant in Ingleside, Texas. And I'm a founder and chief visionary officer of a nonprofit organization called This One's for the Gals. The mission of This One's for the Gals is to help create an awareness amongst girls in grades K through 12 about career opportunities in construction, energy, and manufacturing. Specifically, we like to highlight those roles that maybe they didn't consider previously, didn't know existed, or maybe didn't think were for them. And my passion for this mission comes from me being that girl that had no clue what she wanted to do when she got out of high school. And although my parents talked a lot about college, I didn't do a whole lot of listening. I said, I'm gonna go straight into the workforce and figure things out. They didn't go to college and they seem to be doing okay. Why wouldn't it work for me? That's not the best plan. I ended up getting married really young, having kids really young, and then getting divorced really young, and I was a single mom. I had 2 little twin boys, no post-secondary education or training, a very feeble resume, and 2 little guys I had to provide for. So a friend of mine suggested I do a 6-week AutoCAD drafting and design program. And I said, that sounds interesting, sounds like something I could do. So I went and did this program, got my certificate, found that not only was it interesting, I was pretty good at it. So I walked into a job fair that was being held at Bechtel in Houston, and basically with that certificate and very feeble resume in one hand and a willingness to learn in the other, and said, I'm here for an entry-level job, do you have anything available? Bechtel gave me that opportunity, and it changed my life. It changed everything that I thought it was to be an adult, to have a career, to be a woman in the workforce. I did go back to college, and at the age of 38, got my bachelor's degree. And while that was a great accomplishment, I just keep thinking of all the time I spent spinning my wheels trying to find my place in the workforce. So that's what the goal is of This One's for the Gals, is to help girls find their place just a little bit sooner.
So my name is Taylor Boileau. I'm an assistant superintendent with Ryan Company as a general contractor. My journey into construction began August 1st, 2007. I was going to the 5th grade, and I was living in Minneapolis at the time. That's when the 35W bridge collapsed. It absolutely devastated our community, and it personally affected me. Our family had driven across that so many times. So me being the overly enthusiastic, idealistic child, I decided I was going to solve the world's problems and decide how it failed. So with the help of my father for my 5th grade science fair project, we built some popsicle stick bridges with different sized gusset plates and tested them. And although the project only got honorable mention, it jump-started my career. Now, I hit my teenage years and I wanted to be nothing like my father, like most teenagers. I decided that I wanted to be a marine biologist and deal with sharks, my greatest fear, rather than that. But I don't know if it was the fear or the reason that won out. I decided to go into civil engineering, got my bachelor's in civil engineering at Lakehead University, went and joined Ryan Company as a general contractor immediately after, and started as a project engineer on the project management side. After a couple of years, I decided to join the dark side and jump into the field, became an assistant superintendent. In those years, I've been able to live in 6 different states. I've been able to meet many people, and I've been able to start influencing and changing the culture that is in construction as far as creating a healthy work environment for everyone there. So.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Hager, CIT, CBT, ESP. And I am the accounting and HR manager for AB Design Group. It's an architectural firm in the Orlando, Florida area. And I actually started my journey over 40 years ago working for what was then called a hardware store. Y'all remember those, right? Pre-Home Depot. And I worked there for about 5 years from cashier through assistant manager, learning everything to do with building materials, which is what kind of got me started into construction. And I actually started by answering an ad in the newspaper. You know, for you younger people, that's something we used to get every week, that we got the news in and how we got our jobs before online. And I answered an ad at a company that was just starting out with their computerized accounting system. So I came into that. It was an HVAC company, started at a low position as an accounts payable clerk. Within 2 years, I was taking over as their accounts receivable administrator, worked my way up to controller, and stayed with that company for almost 29, 30 years. And then I left there, went to work as the CFO for a site development company, and now I've been the last 4.5 years with the architectural firm. And then on top of all of that, if that's not enough, I'm also the national president-elect for the National Association of Women in Construction. And I started my journey there about 16 years ago, joining as a timid little member after being in the industry for 26 years, not knowing really anyone, and served on a chapter level, went to regional level over 14 different chapters in 4 different states, and now been on the national executive level for the past 4 years. And in August, I'll be installed as their national president. Interestingly enough, I went back to college during that time to get my bachelor's degree. The same week, my first grandchild was born. So you can go back and do it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tina Montone. I'm the industry liaison with Conspectus, which is a specifications consultancy. I grew up in the industry on the manufacturing side. My family owns a metal roofing and wall systems manufacturing company out of Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I went to school for architecture, got my Bachelor of Architecture, went and worked for the family business, and then I started having a family, and the kids kept on coming, and I ended up with 4 children and moved over to a sister company, which was a property management company. And as the demands of the family grew, I decided to spend my time with them. And as they entered into school, I decided to start my husband the organic fertilizing side of his lawn care company, because I saw an opportunity in that industry for that sector. And after 13 years of being in that company, running it with my husband, we decided to keep the marriage and sell the company. And I decided to go back to the architectural industry. When I started working at ATAS, I was encouraged to join an organization called CSI, which is the Construction Specifications Institute. And throughout all of those crazy career paths, I stayed a member, and I, again, rose from different places in the organization. And so when I decided to return back to the industry, I reached into my CSI network to my now current boss, and I said, do you know anybody who is possibly looking for somebody? I gave him my qualifications and my position, and he said, yes, I am. So here I am working back in the industry and really loving it.
Thank you. And what we're going to talk through with these women, we're going to start with Stephanie about the attraction to the workforce side. So when and how should workforce development begin for young women? And should there be different messaging?
As early as possible. Whenever I first started This One's for the Gals, I said, I want to focus on high school girls. But if you think about it, my daughter's in 8th grade, and by the time they're 7th and 8th grade, they're like, okay, you're going to high school next year. What are you going to be for the rest of your life? Pick your path. What are you going to study? So then I was like, well, how can we get into the middle school and the junior high schools? But how can we start even earlier than that? How can we start, at the elementary level and really get, girls interested in these different kind of roles a little bit earlier? So I think definitely, the earlier that we can get in there, just start creating an interest and sharing, what we know with, the younger generation, the better.
Can you go through an experience where you ran a camp recently and tell some stories from that?
So we're actually organizing a one-day event with NAWIC for Women in Construction Week, and we're in the early stages of planning for that. And we, as a group, we're coming together and be like, okay, how can we create an impact? We want to bring these girls in. We're going to introduce them to the electrical trade, and they're going to do a robot build. And I said, well, why don't we not only introduce them to the trade, but introduce them to a local, manufacturing facility? So I reached out to ExxonMobil. They're about 5 minutes down the road from where we're having our workshop, and said, would you be able to offer a tour of your facility to our students? We're going to have about 50 students, all female students from our local area. And the response was amazing. They said, yes, we will charter a bus. We'll get some boxed lunches. We'll get our plant manager on the bus, and we'll bus them around and show them, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we make. And so I'm really excited for that workshop, because it's going to be not only introducing them to a trade, but to local industry. This is who we are. This is what we do. These are the jobs that we have. And we're also bringing in our local educational institutions, so like our craft training center, our electrical apprenticeship program. And they will be able to network with them. And that part will be, okay, this is how you can get the training to get those jobs. And the response from the schools, I sent out an interest survey, and it's been amazing from the schools. I had one school that came back and said, we want to send 13 girls, and that's from one school. And we only have 50 spots, and that was like within the first 2 hours.
It's fantastic. So this is for Taylor, Karen, and Tina. What tactics are working for getting young women into the construction workforce, and what factors increase their success of retention once they're integrated into the workforce?
So to start with, as far as getting women into the workforce, I know very few women who didn't know someone else who was already in the construction industry. For me, it was my dad. For a lot of people, it is family members. Sometimes it's friends. So exposure is massive. As far as retaining young women in the construction industry, it comes down to three things. It comes down to consideration, it comes down to safety, and it comes down to support. So as far as consideration is concerned, you need to talk to them about what their concerns are entering into the workforce, because you may not know, and you're not going to know unless you ask. Safety, it comes down to psychological safety as well as physical safety. If someone doesn't feel psychologically or physically safe, they are going to leave. And the last thing is the support. It can be a man, it can be a woman, but you need to have someone there to support and guide them through this experience. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and on the NAWIC side of that, we work on quite a few fronts on enticing women into the workforce. We start from the elementary school level all the way up to the high school level. And Stephanie talking about the camp that they're going to do with NAWIC. We actually, across the country in multiple chapters, we have a week-long construction camp that we have the girls come in. They learn different skills. They learn carpentry, electrical, plumbing. One of our camps in Orlando, we have a fire sprinkler company that brings a whole burn trailer out and shows them the difference between having a fire in your home without fire sprinklers and having a home with fire sprinklers. And that's a very expensive setup for them, and they come out and they bring that out for free. So we introduce them to those different skills, and we also give them the skills of how to have a successful interview when you go for your first job. We teach them about PPE and do safety training before every camp. And on the national level, where you have a task force in place that's going to come out with some standard operating procedures so that we can roll this out across the country. And we can do that in conjunction with other organizations.
I think the camps are very, very important to have that exposure. We, being in Allentown, we're a little bit north of Philadelphia, so we don't have the stretch. NAWIC is more in the Philadelphia area. So we have something in our community called the Let's Build Camp, which was put together by the Construction Specifications Institute and the Associated Builders and Contractors. And they're taking what they had created in our area and they're bringing it across the country. So I feel like this exposure with the Let's Build Camp, it's a week-long camp where it gives the different types of trades every single day. And they also take trips to they went to Victaulic to learn about pipe fittings, a brickyard and made brick. It was fantastic exposure. So their opportunities are definitely there that these camps do want to grow. So that prototype definitely exists. And also to retain women, I think it's part of that mentoring as well. These all women's camps are great. And I think also having that, for them to understand how to relate to women, but also to men, and men can become mentors for women, and women can become mentors, obviously, to boys, too. And we were having a discussion in our preparations, well, why aren't these mixed gender camps at an early age so you can complement one another? You know, that's something that can be kind of teased out later, but it is that complementary part too, and also to understand the physical restrictions of women at certain times of their life, such as pregnancy, and just recognize it and respect it and understand how they can then be complementary in the organizations.
Thank you. So we're going to turn to some opportunities for mentorship, learning, and advancement. And I'm going to have each of you talk about the mentors you've had and what they did that helped you and supported you through your journey. And I'm going to start with Tina this time.
Oh, okay. So I've actually had men and women mentors, and mentorship is the backbone of development for any person, I truly believe. And my mentors in particular have pushed me way beyond my comfort zone. And in that, outside that comfort zone is where the growth happened. And so for me, being an industry liaison, I like to call myself a friend finder in different industry organizations. And that's where I have found my mentors in those different organizations.
Yeah, for me, I would say my original mentors were my parents. My dad had a 10th grade education, my mom had a 8th grade education. So for them, mentoring me in continuing to learn as much as possible, no matter what I did. And it doesn't have to actually pertain to the work that I do. I just learn just to learn. And that's where something that they instilled in me. And then when I got into NAWIC, I have had mentors all across the 16 years that I've been a member there, and mentors across the country, not just in my local chapter. I mean, after being in the industry for 26 years before I joined NAWIC, I was content to stay where I was. But getting with these mentors that let me know my potential and help me, guide me towards, knowledge of my own self-worth, that I do know what I know, they let me know and help me know that I could do more. I didn't need to stay in this company that was a toxic workplace. And that's why I changed after almost 30 years. And given that mentorship made me want to be a mentor myself. And I was actually able to be a mentor to a woman that I looked up to, but she didn't have organizational skills and I did. So that experience for me was just phenomenal to know that I could help someone that I really looked up to.
So for me, my mentors are the reason I'm sitting here today. We all know construction's a very hard industry to be in. And for women, it's definitely no different. I've had 3 major mentors in my life. One being when I was interning. It can start that young. When I was an intern with PCL Construction, I had a mentor who showed me who I want to be as a mentor, who I want to be as a manager. One of the biggest things he did for me was, I was 20 at the time, I'd walk into his office and whatever he was doing, he'd finish it. He'd turn off his computer, turn off his phone, and he'd give me his undivided attention. It's amazing how powerful that can be, especially to someone who's younger, someone who's starting out in their career. And the other 2 mentors have really helped me through some difficult times, navigating situations that have come up, and they've also educated me on what my roles and responsibilities are and how much further I can go, like you were saying.
So I had several mentors throughout my career, but I want to focus a little bit on when it got to starting a nonprofit, because I never considered myself a nonprofit starter, entrepreneur, nothing like that. But I saw the need, and that it was one evening, I helped get some of our local high school girls to a conference. It's called Women in Industry. It's open to junior and senior high school girls. And the need is so great, and we know that, for awareness and opportunities like this. And so as I was getting different schools, I knew if I got one school, there was another school right down the road. So a mentor of mine, she said, Stephanie, just start where you're at, and this initiative is going to grow. And I think for anybody that's trying to initiate change, that's the best piece of advice that you could ever get. Because the night before the conference, one of the local school districts, their counselor came up to me, and she was thanking me for getting the initiative started. She's like, we didn't even know this conference existed, much less we could bring our students. You may not realize it, but the majority of our girls have probably never stayed in a hotel room before. They've probably never been out of their hometown. That's kind of the dynamic in your small rural communities. And I didn't think about that. And I like to say that's the night that This One's for the Gals was truly born, because it was no longer about a conference or getting girls, down to Galveston, which is where the conference was held. It's about creating opportunity for these girls to be in a different place, to want more out of life, to stop being okay with just being okay and getting by. There's so many high-paying jobs out there. You can do hard things, and we're going to show you how.
I love this mentorship question, because you guys both talked about who mentored you and how you paid it forward. I'm going to ask both of you about having a female manager. Does it matter?
So I'll start. As far as having a female manager is concerned, I don't think it's necessary for someone to be successful. I think that males can be just as great of managers and mentors as a female. However, I do think it is extremely important for females in this industry to have other females they can talk to and have that support piece. Having someone who not only understands what you're going through, but has been there, someone who can validate what is going on, that it's not okay, and how to navigate it, because they can understand sort of the fears of speaking out, of being told you're just speaking out for attention or whatever. So I think it's critical that they have support and they have mentors, but I don't think it needs to be a female manager.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it matters whether you have a female or a male manager. At the job that I was at for the longest time, I had a female manager. She was the CFO at our company, and she was a great support until I got the same education as she did. And then she wasn't so great, and that's why I left that company. And now I'm with a company with 3 male owners that think the world of me, and so it really doesn't matter. It's how they feel comfortable with who you are also. If they're comfortable with you and they support you, it doesn't matter what their gender is. They're going to be supportive, and that's what I like so much about being in NAWIC, is we're here to support each other. That's what we do. And when I was having issues with that female manager, it was my NAWIC members that supported me and actually got me that next position.
And Karen, what makes you stay now? And I'm going to ask Taylor the same question.
Pardon me?
What makes you stay?
What makes me stay? Loyalty to me. Everyone says you need to be loyal to your company, but your company needs to be loyal to you also. And I work with people now that I told them when I hired there, they said, what kind of company do you want to work for? I said, one that I can retire from. And they said, whoa, 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 that's a lot of pressure. I'm like, good. Well, then when I talked to them just a few weeks ago after being there for 4 years, they said, you know, we're having some little hard times because of the recession and everything, but we want you to retire from here. I said, whoa, that's a lot of pressure. But that's what I want, is a company that wants me for what I know and the education and the opportunities that I can bring to them, and people that support me with my dreams, like being the national president of NAWIC, and that's what they do.
I think what makes me stay at a company is the company doesn't need to be perfect. They just have to try. So in the past year, we had a safety banquet. Industrial has a total of 3 female superintendents. 2 of them are 25, myself included, and then 1 of them has been in the industry for a while. And Ryan Companies made it a point to get all of us at the same time in the same safety banquet. That meant a lot to me. It was small, but it meant the world to me. Another thing is, I know a lot of young women entering the workforce. Now, not all women want to have children, but for those that do, construction is a really hard industry to go into. What's going to happen when I get pregnant? What's going to happen when I deliver the child? What happens when I go on maternity leave? Can I extend that? That's a massive question that when I was 22, I was asking my employers, even though it was 10 years away. So that's definitely something important to consider, and just being willing to listen. You don't always have to understand what's going on, at least be willing to listen, especially when people speak out, because to get to that point is really difficult.
So you're hearing some marketing messages that we need to incorporate back into our industry talk tracks. And one of the things I want to hear from each of you is what makes this industry so special for you, because I think it has a different lens for many women. Would you like to start?
So for me, like I said earlier, it changed my life completely. I had no clue, coming out of high school, the opportunities that I could have within this industry. And once I got into it, and I will tell you, I did the drafting certificate, and I got into Bechtel in an entry-level position, and I didn't really go into drafting. I thought I'd be a designer, but it opened me up to so I stayed on the project management side of things. So in that, we may be teaching girls these different skills, but it's not to say that they will be carpenters, painters, or whatever. It opens them up to so many different opportunities. I was at a bricklaying competition recently, and they have a junior division. And I heard about it, and he said, we only have 2 girls signed up in our junior division. I said, well, I'm gonna be there. I don't care if it's 2 girls or 200 girls, I'm gonna be there. So I have this pink tent, this pink canopy whenever I go to these events, and when my canopy went up, those 2 girls ran over there, and they're like, oh my gosh, what is this? What do you do? Can we take a picture with you? They knew I was there to support them. And one of them, she was a senior, and she won 2nd place. And so I was talking to her afterwards, and I said, so what are your plans for after graduation? She's like, well, I'm gonna go to Texas State Technical College and study construction management. And I'm like, that's amazing. So there's just so many different pathways. There's so many different, opportunities within this industry that we need to start talking about and sharing. It can literally change lives. It can change generations.
For me, what makes construction so special is I've had a lot of personal growth through construction. It's taught me how to stand up for myself, how to communicate effectively, and how to manage conflicts. Especially as a superintendent, there's a lot of conflicts that go on in a site, and how to manage other people. Another thing that construction has brought to me is I've been able to live in 6 different states. I've traveled cross country, seen the Badlands, climbed a mountain, gone up in a hot air balloon. I've gone to do things that I never would have been able to do otherwise. So that's for me.
For me, I think construction has given me opportunities that I probably wouldn't have had in another sector. I do accounting, okay? I'm an introvert. So for me, to be up here with you is something that I would have never aspired to when I first started in the industry. I did like everyone else, not everyone else, but most people did. Coming out of high school, you work at McDonald's or Burger King, and then you go into retail. And then when I got into construction, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. And no matter which sector you're working in construction, from HVAC to site development to architecture, there are differences and there are similarities, and the people are all the same. So for me, when I went to look for another job after leaving that 30-year company, I said, I have to be in construction. I'm not going to go anywhere else. I know I can do accounting anywhere, but it has to be in construction.
So this right here, Kurt, CSI, AIA, Crew, NAWIC, this is what I think is very, very special in the industry. When I was being raised in the manufacturing industry, my dad was a part of a lot of industry associations, and I saw that when you're a part of an industry association, you can really steer the ship. It is the industry associations that, through the relationships, through the education, through the networking, really improve the entire industry. And to me, all of those things are so exciting. Number one, the relationships and the networking, that is like at my core. And I'll tell you, the relationships that I've gained just in this organization really helped develop me professionally and personally too. I've had some wonderful conversations and friendships that came out of it. But it's really amazing that I always stayed close to CSI, which was, my foundation and my education. But that is really what I feel is a huge support.
And I spent over 15 years outside of industry, and in talking to my dad about joining the family business after being away for 2 decades, the opportunity to impact this sector is so tremendous. You can either stay in management consulting and make publicly traded companies a few more EBIT points, or you can work with your business partners and create a legacy that employs generations of families. It's an easy choice. And I'm really appreciative that Kurt brought us together. All right. So for Taylor and Tina, what makes this industry so unique? What's different from any other sector?
I would say, from my perspective, it would be the travel aspect. As far as attracting women, it's the travel. It's the meeting new people and working with a completely different group of people on every single project, making new connections. It's a unique industry, and you can also get paid a lot, which we don't talk about enough. That's important to tell young women. Like, they still care about money. They do. So talking about the money aspect, talking about the travel aspect, talking about the possibility for work-life balance once you reach that point, that's also unique to this industry and the people you meet.
I agree. I have a 17-year-old daughter who said, please don't make me go to college. And I said, you don't have to go to college. I said, I'm in an industry where they're screaming for people. And she is definitely driven by money. She really enjoys travel. So those are 2 very big points to her in particular. But I think the opportunity also is tremendous. From starting in the field, not knowing what children want to do, or what girls or boys want to know what they want to do, to being able to, we had this conversation last night, you can be in the field for a little bit, go back to school and get your construction management degree. There's just so many different pathways, and it's not just necessarily construction. There's also opportunities in accounting and insurance and real estate development. The sky's the limit, really.
One other thing to add on to that, with the opportunity that we don't talk about enough, is that with the older generation retiring and the lack of new people entering the workforce, the opportunity to basically skyrocket your career, if you want to, is there. So,
Advancement.
yeah.
So speaking of advancement, what kind of things are you looking for in advancement to the next level? How do you want to be supported for those of you that are on executive management paths to partner?
Me? All right. I'm already at an executive level, being the accounting manager. In a larger company, I would be the CFO. But with my firm that I'm with, and I've only been there 4.5 years, but I have an opportunity, if I desire, to actually purchase into that partnership. That's an opportunity that I might not have gotten in any other industry. It is, you know, being an accountant and, like I said, being an introvert, that's pretty big for me. And that knowing that the owners of the company have the confidence in me to be able to do that is just phenomenal.
I have to add something on to the opportunity here because my boss is sitting right there, and I have to plug for specifiers too. Specifications is another opportunity for in our particular firm. There's we're a small firm, so as far as like CFO and all those kind of C-suite positions, it's more of how the advancement of our firm is in the industry itself, and how not necessarily my position in the firm, but my position in the industry itself and how it'll grow. So there's a lot of room there. So it's a little bit of a different perspective on it.
I'm going to riff on the economic empowerment theme. So I'm going to have Stephanie tell the story about the woman that you trained up and what she was able to do with her newfound knowledge.
So I was probably in my 20s whenever I got into industry, went and took that certification course, got on with Bechtel, single mom, 2 little boys that were under 2 years old. And I worked hard, really hard, to differentiate myself there at Bechtel. I took on tasks that not a lot of people wanted to do. I was like, hey, I'll do it. I'll work hard. And I got on a really great path there, and I worked my way into some really great roles. But within 2 years, I was able to buy my little boys a house. And for a girl that came from parents who never owned their own house, they always rented, that was huge for me. And they're 19 now, by the way. They just graduated high school. But, just looking back on those first few years of being a single mom and going through, difficult times, and to see where we are now is just, it's humbling, and it's definitely a place, like, Karen, I never thought I'd be up here talking, sharing. Like, if my 18-year-old self could see me now, it's crazy. But, it's, like we've all said, it's definitely life-changing, and there's a lot of, girls, women out there that are trying to find their place. They're trying to, whether they're raising families, whether they're single moms, they need a path, and this industry can provide not just a great path, not just stable jobs, not just a job, right? It can provide a career.
And then she told me the story about the 23-year-old that she met recently that through the training bought her own house. So the generations can persist. And the other nugget in all of our preparation that came about, we're doing a lot at the workforce development level in major cities around city-specific growth and trade initiatives. What you're hearing today is rural and small town, and those areas that may have historically been neglected. And as we have so many mega investments throughout the Midwest, the Southeast, and beyond, what are we doing to draw folks into the industry where maybe they don't have as many opportunities? So that's something to think on. All right. What would you challenge each person here today to do after listening to this panel to make a change in our sector? Who'd like to start?
I can start if you want. So I would say have confidence. If you see just a little bit of something that we talk about, the soft skills, coupled with hard skills also, but have confidence in your team, and have the courage also to be the mentor. You may not see it in yourself, but it is amazing how encouragement and confidence in somebody else, if you see confidence in somebody that they don't see in themselves.
Just stole my answer.
Sorry.
I would say also be a mentor. If you're not already a mentor, be a mentor. You may not think that you've got the skill set or the level to be a mentor. And like I said, I mentored someone that I really looked up to because I found out she didn't have a skill set that I did. And actually, when I got first called for this panel, I said, "Are you sure I'm who you want? I do accounting." And they said, "Yes, absolutely, we're who we want. So do that for someone else. If you're not already part of an organization that helps people in the industry, become part of that organization, which you're here with Kurt, but become part of something that helps other people grow, because that's the only way we're going to continue on. That's the only way we're going to get more people into this industry, is helping each other. They're not going to come unless we help them.
I'd say if you're in a position to, definitely, if you are in the field, take a look at the consideration, the safety, and the support of those people in the field. But something that every single person here today can do is work on their consideration. One of the biggest moments, and it's so small looking back on it for me, was I was out on a concrete pour walking with my old soup, a couple of project engineers, and they were talking about football, and I know nothing about football. But so I just stand there, I'm doing my little QA, QC checklist. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna ignore them, whatever. I'm just gonna do my own thing. And one of the superintendents looked at me, he's like, "Oh, do you like football?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." He's like, "Oh, what sport are you interested in?" Just including people in a conversation can mean so much to them. So that's my advice.
So whenever I was helping get girls to the conference in Galveston, there weren't girls lining up. There weren't. They didn't know what it was. They had no clue. So I'd go and visit the schools and kind of share a little bit about my organization, my background, generate some interest for the conference. And I asked the girls, do you know anybody that works for these local companies? Exxon, Cheniere, Kiewit, our local industry there in South Texas. And a bunch of hands went up. And they're like, "Oh yeah, my dad, my brother, my uncle." And I was like, "Oh, this is great." So do you know what they do? All the hands went down. Parents, we've got to start talking to our kids about what we do at work. Besides coming home like, "Oh, I had a bad day." Share what you do, share what your company does with your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, nephews. Start getting them interested early. That's the biggest part, is just sharing, starting where you're at. And where are you? You're at the dinner table, or you're, at home on a weekend, things like that.
So you sort of stole my answer, but she answered it better. Conversion. So what's the number one reason that children work in construction? Because someone they know did. An uncle, a father, what have you. So we have a conversion problem. And I was sitting at home a few years ago, and I watched, my daughter was like 3 or 4 at the time, and she took my phone and she put it on her ear and she banged on my keyboard and said, "I'm working." Familiar for any of you? So I thought, that's only part of what we do. So we're building a new headquarters. I was able to drive my kids through the site. It wasn't quite walkable at the time due to the site conditions, but really showing them what's beyond HGTV and the light renos and true commercial industrial builds is what we need to be doing. And when my daughter said, "I think I want to be a fashion designer," I said, "Well, architects do that with buildings. It's kind of like fashion design. So every time you have a moment, flip the moment. Don't complain about everything when you get home. They're listening and they'll think it's too hard." And so with that, what's one thing you all wish had happened at the beginning that would have helped you further in your career? Can't get a whole do-over. Karen, you want to start?
Sure. I actually wish I had gotten involved in NAWIC a lot quicker and not waited 20 some odd years to get involved, because I think I would have gone a lot farther, a lot quicker if I had done that. Because at that point, that's when I had people that really believed in me and helped support me. And that's something I wish someone had told me about a lot sooner. I actually was told about NAWIC as I was going into an executive position, and someone said, a gentleman said, if you want to further your professional career, join an organization like NAWIC. And that's what I did. And that's why it's taken me so long. Here I am 10 years from retirement. I'm going to become the national president of NAWIC. So could have done that a lot quicker if I'd joined sooner. Who knows?
I guess it's kind of the reverse. I have my Bachelor of Architecture, and I kind of wish I just had gotten my Bachelor of Architectural Studies, because I feel like there would have been more opportunity earlier in my career. With the Bachelor of Architecture, you know, there was like this laser focus. I've got to be an architect, I've got to be registered, and then, you know, other things, fate had other plans. So I feel like if I had a little bit more flexibility in my education, I could have probably, you know, had a little bit more opportunities earlier.
The one thing that I would have known would have been, you can't change what you tolerate. Oftentimes, things don't just start out as harassment. It doesn't start out as discrimination. It starts with the small things. It talks about a bunch of guys talking about going to Hooters for lunch, or a bunch of guys talking about women in a derogatory way. It's not always directed towards people. And I really wish when I would have started out, I would have had the courage and the confidence to stop that in its tracks.
So for me, I think whenever I went to take that drafting course, I would have brought my friends, told my girlfriends about it. Now, you know, I'm trying to help girls with career exploration, but I feel like if I would have started that sooner and shared, hey, I'm taking this course, you know, I think you'd be good. But I don't think I believed in myself that I could do it. I'm like, I've never worked for these companies, these big engineering companies. Believing in myself a little bit more and bringing my friends with me earlier.
It's a great segue.
Well, I want to thank all of them. Please show your appreciation, and we'll take questions. Great job.
Thank you again, Ann and team. Wasn't that amazing? I've learned so much. I took notes. It was inspirational. And we appreciate you all taking the time to be with us. Just so you know, and so that you folks know, from its inception, CURT had wanted to establish a culture of inclusion that did not give preference to gender. We've had leaders like Jocelyn Scott at DuPont. We've had our own Teresa Magnus, who was here earlier with Southern Company. We've had Donna Perry with P&G, all in leadership positions, committee chairman, chairperson situations, and then our own Ann Martinelli. So we want to make that a value, and in the recent years we've been more assertive, maybe the word is aggressive, and including you folks on the agenda and things like this. We had NAWIC not long ago in 2022 as well, and we are going to continue to advocate. We would be fools not to, especially given Anibon's dire prediction for the availability of men coming into this business. So this is not only a moral and ethical decision to say yes, there's a good business case to say yes. And as you can see, there are folks like that out there who have the passion and the resilience and the assertiveness to really bring value to our business and to our industry while enriching their own lives. It's so inspirational. We had several questions, so let me get back. I accidentally pulled it out of here, and here is the first one. What do you think, and you may have already answered it, if not, or if so, we'll just go through. What do you think is the most effective recruitment tool to get ladies into the industry? If you had to pick one, what would you encourage us to do? Open question for anyone. So if you have thoughts, just chime up.
I'd say, for me at least, it was shop class and my dad and the popsicle stick bridges. Actually working with my hands and being like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I still love the smell of like wood being cut because it brings me back to shop class, so.
I would say we had kindergarten, career day. I couldn't be there, I was on a job site, so I sent a few videos of our wind park turbine builds to the kindergarten teacher, and she played them in class, and she said, everyone said, whoa, that's so cool. So start early, use video if you can't be there. I know we're all remotely distributed.
So you kind of stole my answer.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's the same. Let's get out to our schools. You know, girls can't be what they can't see. So go and share what you're doing, share your journey, share how you got to where you're at. And yeah, I think that's the most important.
I love that tagline. Don't steal it, NAWIC, because we might use it. Girls can't be what they don't see.
We already have it.
There's a lot of truth to that.
You already have it.
Oh, you already did?
No, just kidding.
You better trademark it. The efforts to get women into the construction industry, as we've heard from many, are improving, but oftentimes they don't stay because of working conditions, harassment, discrimination, etc. What do you feel can be done to make a workplace more welcoming for everyone, and especially women? Thoughts?
I can tackle the site piece. Working conditions absolutely are awful. If you think about it, a woman who's just had a child and is going back to work, she's nursing. Where's she gonna nurse? In a porta-john? In her car? Where anyone can walk by? These are things that go through their minds. As far as the harassment and discrimination piece, we are nowhere near past that. We need to seriously take a look at ourselves, take a look at what's on site and what's happening, because what you need to realize is unless you're there every single day, you are considered a suit. As soon as you walk onto that site, every single person knows you're gonna be there. Every single person is on their P's and Q's, so what you catch, those little glimpses, those little comments here and there that you think, oh, that's not that bad, we'll just let that slide, that is the root of a much bigger problem.
Yeah, we
ahead.
need men on the job sites to be advocates for the women, and we say, if you see it, say it. If a man sees a woman being mistreated on the job site, he needs to say something. Don't just hang out with the boys and say, oh yeah, you see her. No, say something. We need men to be our advocates.
I mean, speaking to that, like, I know lots of men in superintendent positions in different companies, and I was talking to one, and he said the other day, someone walked on their job site, and one of the guys was taking an orientation with a bunch of girls, and when they walked up and left, they said, oh, look at that meat. Like, it's still there. It 1000% is, and he said, that is not acceptable, get off my site.
And if you're not sure what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, if you wouldn't want it said to your mother or to your wife or to your daughter, then it's probably not acceptable.
Yeah, we commended Turner Construction, if you were here early on and heard Ben, and I know for a fact they've done that in Cincinnati on the FC Stadium project. When there were issues that begin to emerge as a project culture, they've addressed it aggressively. And I think that ultimately that sort of attention to these sorts of deficits of discrimination, harassment, that helps everyone. The rising tide lifts ships for every worker who is participating on that project. So it's not strictly a female issue, it is a cultural issue that we need to have of inclusion, respect for everyone. Another question, how hard is it to find a sponsor, which this person says is more than just a mere mentor, but a sponsor who'll say, hey, you don't have budget to go to CURT, I'll get you a budget to go to CURT. You don't have budget to join NAWIC, I'll get you a budget to join NAWIC. A much more intimate relationship than just a mentor. How hard is it to find sponsors in such a male-dominated industry?
I can answer that
Or
one.
how do you suggest we do that? Go ahead.
So with one of my sponsors, they're an electrical contractor, and it was a sponsorship to get girls to the conference in Galveston. And we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, you know, we have like 2 girls, you know, on staff, 2 electricians on our staff. We'd like to bring in more. And I said, you know, I know boys need the same encouragement and the same push. I said, I have twin boys, so I know, you know, they're about to graduate, and they have no clue what they want to do. And he's like, Stephanie, don't worry. He said, I've learned that where the girls go, the boys will follow.
Maybe that's a new marketing tool, gang.
And yes, so it was a joke, but I mean, halfway true, right? But, you know, it reaches more than just, our female students, right? I know we talk a lot about, or I've talked a lot about, workshops for girls and conferences for girls and things like that. But the majority of what we're talking about, the schools are opening up to it, and then they'll start looking for opportunities to bring the programs into their schools, right? How can we start an electrical trade program or a masonry program or things like that, right? And so that's just getting the conversation started.
I think everybody here has the opportunity to be a sponsor as well. Conspectus, because we're in the specifications world, we sponsor memberships for students to be members of CSI. And so I think everybody here has the opportunity to be that sponsor and to offer that.
Yeah.
Great. Here's a good question. What advice do you give young women who want to enter the industry? Should they go through the trades or engineering, project management, architecture, etc.? How do you help them make decisions once you have their interest?
I say find your passion. Mm-hmm. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, then you're not going to succeed in it. I have a passion for accounting. I know it's weird, but I have a passion for accounting. And that's what I want to do. And I want to do it in the construction industry. And anyone that talks to me about what the opportunities are for in construction, I say, well, what's your passion? What do you like to do? Do you like to build with your hands, or are you more cerebral? Do you like to draw? Then that's the passion you need to follow.
Yeah, I'll agree. I don't think there's any one right path through construction. And the best thing about construction is if you start out in the trades and you decide, hey, I really want to be a general contractor, you can make that switch. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm a general contractor, I want to get my architecture degree. Let's do that, because that's going to be an asset to the company. They'll pay for it, and let's transfer over to that. So I don't think there's any one right path.
So when I was visiting the schools, there was a girl sitting in scrubs, and I thought she's probably in the medical program, because that's, girls gravitate to medical, cosmetology, teaching, that sort of thing. And I looked at her and I said, do you know that Exxon has their own nurse on staff? And her eyes got wide. I'm like, yeah, they have their nurse on staff. They have employee safety and health. That's huge within these companies. I said, do you like teaching? Maybe you think you want to be a teacher, employee learning and development. Just look to industry for your passion, right? It's not just, if you're going to be in the medical field, you have to go to a clinic or a hospital. No, industry has those same opportunities. And then, once they get there, then sky's the limit.
It is indeed, and that's a great commentary to the next question, and that is that one important point I often hear, says the questioner, inquirer, is that women oftentimes bring diverse skill sets to jobs, projects, the company, that males are not necessarily strong suited to. Can you speak to some of those from your perspective?
I've actually had people tell me that gentlemen say that they feel women are more critical thinkers than men are, and that's why they like having them on their jobs.
I've been told many times that I'm more detail-oriented than most of my male colleagues, but I think it really depends on the person. I don't necessarily think it's a male-female thing. I think it's more just person to person and what their skill sets are.
So obviously we've made some progress on inclusion of females into the business. If you had to pick one or two action items that we as an industry or a company need to take to move this forward, what would those one or two suggestions be that we could actually go back and begin doing today?
Open your doors to students. Open your doors. I work for a chemical manufacturer, and as you can imagine, we can't have teenagers walking around our site. But recently we invited 2 groups of girls to our site, and it was like a day for them to get a plant tour, a lab tour. They toured, our operations center, our training center. They heard from our plant manager, this is who we are, this is what we make. This is what you use in your day-to-day that, comes from this facility right here. We brought in some of our women that are in different roles, and they shared, what they do in their careers. And then at the end of the day, we brought in our local educational institutions and said, hey, they have the programs to help you get these jobs. And in talking with the schools and going and visiting with the principals, more than once, they told me, okay, we need y'all, right, industry, to tell us what we need to teach our kids So when they leave here, they can go get jobs with y'all. I said, that's a fair question. So let's start opening our doors.
I would say the two things for me would be create opportunities for women to support women in your company, give them opportunities to get together, especially being in the field. I only see my project team every single day for 8 months, which is mostly men. Usually I'll be in foreman meeting with 40 other men. An opportunity to talk to a woman about her experiences in the field is massive. And the second thing would be to take a look at your safety. Take a look at the psychological safety on site and take a look at safety in general, because sometimes I do concrete pours. 11 p.m. at night, get to work, there are 50 men working there. I get scared sometimes, I'm gonna be honest. I'll lock my doors. I'm allowed to bring my dog to work when it's nighttime, and I'm allowed to work with my dog because that gives me that extra security. So take a look at your safety procedures and create opportunities to create a support network.
I would say embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you make that a culture in your workplace, in your companies, then you're going to invite in a lot more people into your company. More than just women, men, everyone.
I would say the organizations also that do offer opportunities for developing women, such as NAWIC, CREW. I'm a member of CREW also, and the development there is tremendous.
The other thing that we haven't talked about is clearly communicating the mindsets and behavior expectations on sites. So if someone has a desired skill and they like to work in facility, for example, they know that skill, but do they know they need to be there 45 minutes early to go behind the fence line, security clearance, safety stand down, PTAs, right? Educate people about what the job really is, and that goes for young men and women.
That may have been the answer to the next question. We have room for two more. For us women, writes someone, what skill sets do you feel we need to concentrate on that would bring greatest value as women to the industry and our respective companies?
I think one skill set we need to really work on is our communication. Communicating our needs, our education, communicating what we can bring to the industry. So many of us think we're not enough. They say that a man can have 60% of a job description and say, I can get that job, but a woman wants to have 100%, or she thinks she's not qualified. Know that we are qualified. We can learn, that's what we do. We're adaptable.
I would say work on conflict management. Oftentimes we're afraid to rock the boat and make someone upset. I think that's a skill set that we really need to work on and be willing to say, hey, here's how I feel about that. Hey, here's my ID on this.
Great. Any other comments on that? So I was pleased, Ann, when you showed the construction was, I think, in second place with parity, and engineering with pay. It's not 100% as it should be, but it's quite high. And one of our audience persons says this: kudos to Kurt and the National Conference team for bringing continual focus on this important issue. In addition to needing women, women improve the image and also the professionalism, by the way, this came from a guy, of our industry. And then one to us, collectively, should Kurt consider a, quote, pay pledge, quote, among our companies to strive for equivalent pay regardless of gender? Any thoughts on pay pledge, equity, parity? That's something that would help. Memorandum of understanding with NAWIC that as an organization, Kurt and its members are pledging to strive. Now, obviously with some larger companies, it's hard to create policy, but for some of our smaller organizations, at least standing behind it and being an advocate, as somebody said, an internal advocate might help.
Yeah.
So it's something I think for NAWIC to think about and us to follow up on.
It's a great idea.
It is a fantastic idea, fantastic idea. And with that, let's show our appreciation for this fine team of ladies. Thank you so much.